Welcome to USC.
We're excited.
USC. Thanks for being here. Let's talk about just real briefly, like, where are you from, where did you grow up?
I'm from Del Mar, California, and happy to announce I've been coming to almost every USC home game for 25 years. So I did not attend USC, but I sometimes say I do during football games. So
Not as much this year, but in past years, yes.
we'll talk about that later.
And Dan, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Maryland, right outside D.C.
Okay. And you guys met in college, so talk about sort of where you went to college and how you guys met.
Yeah, so we both went to Brown together, and I was working in a computer science research group for a while, and basically doing in the academic environment what became social networking later on. So sort of a lot of the predecessors to Facebook and Twitter and whatnot. Unfortunately, we did it in an academic world and should have really built it into a company, but at the time I was doing that, it was the internet winter. So I was talking about a lot of this with various friends, telling them what we were playing with, showing them stuff. And one of my friends came up and said, there's this guy who's talking about the same sort of stuff, but he's more interested in like the business and marketing, and whatever angles. I don't know quite what it is you guys talk about, but it all sounds the same. You have to meet. So he introduces me, and we started talking. There's this guy basically who every day at Brown pretty much is wearing.
Wait. I want to
Yeah.
ask this. So you came from Del Mar to Brown.
Yep, that's correct.
What did you major in?
Economics.
Economics,
Yeah.
you majored in.
Math and computer science.
And so you met this guy before you say his nickname. Sort of paint the picture. Paint the picture.
Okay,
What should I just
I'm going to paint the picture.
Okay.
I want it. So I meet him, and it's the middle of winter in Providence, Rhode Island. You may not all understand it, particularly those of you who have lived in California all your life, but it's always blizzard conditions. There's snow everywhere all the time, and there's this guy who, in the middle of the snow, all the time, always is wearing rainbows, swim trunks, and a USC T-shirt. Okay, so his nickname.
Hold on. So you're at this great Ivy League school with a lot of bright people around, and the
not very good football.
The technical people. So I'm sure they have some really creative ways to describe you. Really like dorky technical names. What was Brian's nickname in college?
So it was a bunch of New Yorkers who whenever he come up, he said, "Here comes the California fuck." That's what he was known as.
True story.
Now, it turns out that he still actually does usually wear the swim trunks and flip-flops and the SC shirt, which Andrew who works with us can attest to. But whenever there's something that's videotaped, and I mentioned to Brian that this was taped, both Brian and I get calls from Brian's mom, like, this is, you can't do it, it's unprofessional. So Brian's mom is like the cultural force above any of this.
She says to me each time, "You're no longer 21 years old, Brian." And so inevitably that means you wear pants and boots and a collared shirt. So
I can now see why Dan actually wanted you to come so badly. I think this is sort of like going to be a little bit of getting even for some.
And I think if we're doing a good job on a panel, hopefully you see areas we agree and disagree.
Yeah.
But
we'll disagree.
Yeah. But yeah, hopefully useful stuff.
Yeah, let's go for it.
So you're at Brown, and you met early at Brown, so like freshman, sophomore?
No, so I had actually already dropped out to play around with all this social software stuff. And I'm a few years older than Brian, so he was actually a senior.
Yeah, I was. I think we met as a junior, but I was swimming around the engineering lab, and I found Dan, and I think I called my mother, and I said, I think it's probably a good idea that I drop out of school. I met this really cool guy, and I know that sounds really weird, right? My mom's like, "Can you describe him? I said, he has hair down to his ass. He lives behind, a crack house, and which is all true. And I said he's an absolute brilliant computer scientist, and he has many of the same ideas I do. And I think what catalyzed our relationship is we had taken tons of walks. We'd talk about every prototype from here to mankind, and this was also true passion stuff. This was before anyone was becoming famous in software, and I really Dan described it as nuclear winter, and everyone here has to remember there was a bubble. The bubble burst in 1998-ish. And from 1998 till Google, which really started to, sort of, we'll call it catch steam in 2004, nothing happened. Everyone who had a good background was going into law school, med school, or banking. There was no one that even thought consumer technology was even remotely interesting. So I went up to Harvard with one of my best friends, and he said, you should meet these guys. And I came back and I told Dan, there's this really interesting project on Harvard campus that's a lot like the stuff we're building. It's called Facebook. And maybe we should, they seem like they actually have their shit together. I actually met the Winklevoss twins. I didn't meet Mark. So right then and there, we said, holy crap, this is becoming a race. And this is hilarious because Facebook this time probably had, a couple thousand users on the Harvard campus. And so from that point on, we got very focused. And I think the lesson here, though, was it was very genuine. We weren't trying to make money. We weren't trying to become famous. It was what was interesting to us, what was intellectually stimulating, and it just took sort of every waking hour, and we've been doing that now for 12 years.
So take us through from Brown to the apartment, and where do you sort of translate into your first business venture, and are you moving out to Silicon Valley into California to start that?
Yeah.
I'll go.
Yeah, jump.
So we shot around, I think, every idea possible, and we're looking at, there's too much information, it's growing. We wanted to build tools to help people deal with that. So we ended up starting this company called Nuru that was news aggregation. So scanning all of the websites, blogs, newspapers, whatever you were into, and trying to personalize it for you. And when doing this, because it was this passion project, we lived in this area called Fox Point that was the sketchiest area. And as Brian said, my downstairs neighbor was actually a crack dealer. The police occasionally would come in with their guns drawn. And I could write an essay on the difference between the 12-cent ramen, the 13-cent ramen, and the very fancy 25-cent ramen, and why the 13-cent ramen is just sort of the perfect type.
One time the crack dealer did come upstairs and he saw the computers and he said, you guys do porn, all right?
Yeah.
And
we got known in the whole neighborhood. Yeah. Everyone assumed that we were making porn films on the internet.
Yeah, that was incorrect. That was incorrect.
And so what
he doesn't know the rest of the company.
What brought you out to California and sort of transition to that?
Yeah, I mean, once in a while you have to, I think you have to go to the Mecca. And what was interesting was in, the phase of, we look at the sort of consumer technology business today and we say, everyone's in San Francisco. But was actually kind of funny that when we moved to San Francisco in, I think, 2005-ish, there was not very many people doing consumer technology. And people were still sort of warming up to this idea of what, the power of social networking, the power of the web. And so we said, let's put ourselves in a position to succeed. How do you succeed? You find the ecosystem, and the ecosystem was in Silicon Valley. So that's where the venture guys were. That's where the sort of burgeoning, sort of this new class of angel investors were. And so we said we have to be there. We went there with literally no contacts. We got an apartment in 12 hours. We moved out 2 weeks later. We lived in the essentially, 900 square foot place.
With me, Brian, and Brian's now wife.
Yeah, that was wonderful. She can tell you all about it. And we got to work. And I think that what we did, what I think was the most interesting, is we didn't ask for permission, but we decided that if we were going to do this, we were going to do it our way, and we were going to work as hard as possible. And we inevitably got incredibly lucky as well, but it was a very interesting time. And I think the other thing that I learned about our sort of migration to the Mecca, which is San Francisco, it was incredible to be around an emerging class of entrepreneurs that were all coming up together. We got to see prototypes of YouTube. Our friends have started, multiple friends have started billion-dollar enterprises. Some of our friends have become, incredibly famous venture capitalists, but we knew them when everyone was sort of on the same playing field. And I think it's really important to understand that those relationships that you make from from the day you turned 22 or the day you graduate from school to the time you're 30 are incredibly important, because these are the people that inevitably, enter positions that, sort of this keiretsu where everyone helps each other.
Yeah, and I'm going to add to that and say, I think everyone helped each other, and I think just that culture of, giving because you're part of that community. But the second thing is now we live down here, and you'll see why a little bit later, But we go up there, and still, I reintroduce myself to people who we only met once or twice, and they say, yeah, you're the guys who ask all the questions all the time. I think we got a reputation just asking people even the dumbest questions, no matter what. Like, how does this work? How does that work? And
that's I think it mattered. And I think also the interesting thing is Dan and I prided ourselves on doing everything ourselves. I mean, from we think of it as the stack. It's a term for just everything, sort of a linear stack of all the things you need to do. From the bottom ideation phase all the way to the distribution phase, marketing, raising capital in the middle, UI, UX, mobile. I mean, we pride ourselves on being able to do every single piece of the stack. And the reason why is, if we're not doing it, someone else is doing it, and we're not sure what that quality is. And so we spent.
I would say in those early days, right? It's you learn how to do it, which is before you hire someone. Later on, when you get big enough, hopefully you're in a position to hire someone or get someone else. It's if you in those have done the job for a bit to know, wow, what's really hard? Who am I going to be impressed with as an expert? So they walk in and they say, I know how to do X, Y, and Z. You can quiz them. You can quickly say, oh, you can do this much better. So eventually as a company grows, it becomes specialized, and hopefully the person you hire is 10 times better than you. But still, I think if in our office, if the trash can's overflowing, if the toilet's clogged, it's not call a janitor. It's I grab a plunger, and that's what you do.
That's small business, everything from beginning to end. So did you come out with Nuru?
Yeah, so it was an interesting.
Did you raise money for Nuru?
Yeah, so it was an interesting story. We were involved with a bunch of incredibly brilliant people in the early days who really sort of shepherded us through. So I'm
going to actually tell a story before that.
Okay, sure.
Then you can talk about that.
Dan likes to talk.
I like to talk. So he can talk more about the chill stuff. What happened was we moved out to Silicon Valley, and the first Web 2.0 conference, or the first re-thawing of the web conference happened. And it was like a $2,000 conference, which was shockingly out of our price range at that point. Maybe it was an even more expensive one. And I looked at the list of sponsors for that. And each sponsor typically for these conferences gets a bunch of free badges. And I just called a bunch of the people, the ones who weren't in San Francisco where the conference was, because I figured they're not going to fly down 20 people. They'll have some extra ones. So I talked to this guy, Dick Hart, who ran a company called Skip.
That's his real name.
Yeah, real name. Great guy, other than he does have a habit of crashing Ferraris. He said, oh yeah, you can have extra passes. We went there. I met some people on this technical mailing list. This guy ran a list, Friends of Rohit Kari, and I said, well, I'm on your Friends of Rohit Kari list, therefore we're friends. And he helped introduce us, and now you can.
Oh, yeah, and I just think we joined sort of a research lab. We got going. We were lucky to have we encapsulated 8 months of work in, literally 6 years of work in 8 months. And we rolled out a product. We went around, we showed a bunch of VCs. It was very well received, lots of attention, and incredible amounts of attention. A lot of media outlets. I mean, we had VCs calling us, coming to our house, and inevitably we had 3 or 4 major corporations want to buy the company even before sort of all of the sort of commercial release. And so we had, what I would consider preposterous acquisition offers before we had, really sort of even entered the market. And at that point in time, we were facing incredibly onerous terms on the venture side because, as Dan said, the market was frozen out. And so you hear about these valuations today in hundreds of millions of dollars. And imagine, a venture capitalist coming to you and saying, I'd like to give you $500,000 and the valuation of the company being $1 million. And you start to go do the math and you say, wait a second. That doesn't seem right. I'm giving up a whole lot of this company. And so, unfortunately, we sort of did that sort of cost benefit, and we said, wait, an acquisition here gives us this amount of flexibility later in life, and if we take this deal right here, we're going to have to sell a huge amount of the company. So we chose to be, be acquired, and we were acquired by Rupert Murdoch's News Corp. And it was an incredible end to a wild ride. Sometimes I think we talk about it. I think we might have sold too soon, and we won't make that mistake again. But in the end, we were acquired because we were there early, and we were the best at what we were doing. And we were the best because we were the guys that were working every single day, 8 a.m. till sometimes 3, 4 in the morning. You know, we had been doing that for 4 years. So when someone said, hey, what do you think about social? I mean, we couldn't stop talking. I mean, they literally, we had to kick us out of the Fox building when we were being acquired because there were so many ideas that we were giving them about MySpace.
So they acquired not only for Nuru, but for the team?
Yeah, we had a small team. You know, you had a small team with us, and we brought everyone down and sort of became part of a lab within Fox.
And you have some good advice on, going to a place you don't know people.
Yep.
You've sort of given some examples. I spoke to your lawyer last
Yeah.
week.
Sorry to hear that.
It wasn't.
I'm kidding.
No, was
it
great.
Yoakum?
Yes.
Okay, he's a great
So,
guy. Yeah.
He told me how you guys met and how. So this is, for a tech company to be represented by Wilson Sonsini, that is the blue chip tech firm. I mean, name any company, Google, Facebook, Apple, and Wilson Sonsini not only represents them, but probably owned a decent chunk of it going in.
They represent Google and Apple, but not Facebook.
Not Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
So how does
For the record.
how does a startup with no money and no context get to be represented by Wilson Sonsini?
Yeah, hustle, baby.
Yeah,
Hustle.
we were introduced by our friend Miko. I don't know if he mentioned that. Who just said, "Hey, you have to meet these guys." To Yoakum. Yoakum said, for each of these things, we spent time, knowing our stuff and being able to hopefully offer some value, like show them something new, show them something surprising. And I think Miko was interested, and then we went down and met Yoakum and hit it off with him too.
I think the second time, I'm not sure if they'd agreed to represent us. He said, "I've got a meeting set up at 8:30 in the morning, and you guys should be prepared. This is a really important pitch." And I think I remember I said, "Who are we pitching?" And he said, "John Doerr." So, excuse me, Mike Moritz. Mike Moritz. That's like, this is basically like saying you're gonna go see God in the morning. Mike Moritz is the most famous venture capitalist in the world, period. I mean, we're talking.
At that moment, he's retired now.
He's retired now, but you name it, he did it. And we walk into a room, and there is Mike Moritz sitting there, and he says, "Okay, let's go, boys." And it's that sort of experience, that game time experience, knowing your stuff, being confident, not really worrying about how old you are or what your pedigree was, even though, frankly, those things, we were lucky. I think we had sort of checked off the boxes, but speaking the language. And, you can't, I think that life is there's all these moving targets. And one of the things that Dan and I sort of consistently do is we always say yes. We always say yes. Every opportunity is always open, except when we're building product. When we build product, we always say no. But I can get into that later.
Great advice. So let's shift forward and talk about Chill.
Mm-hmm.
What is Chill? Amanda, can you call it up on the screen?
So let me ask everyone here, how many of you pay for cable television?
Or satellite?
You don't count, sorry. Okay, wait, so higher.
Personally or parents?
No, personally. How many of you personally pay for cable television? I said television, not IP, not data. So, if I would say this is like 30% of the room, 20% of the room. So, what's happening today is there's some fascinating stuff going on that's largely driven by the internet. And, everyone here is, you guys live in a bubble. You guys are on YouTube, you're on Facebook, you're on Twitter, you're on Instagram. You're getting your information and your entertainment in a vastly different way than your parents do. And so, what they say about big opportunities happen when there's big shifts. And there's a tectonic shift going, or sort of in motion right now, around how people receive content. And so our thesis with Chill is actually quite simple. We're building sort of what we believe in 10 years will be the opportunity to do direct-to-consumer entertainment. So what does that mean? So I'm sure some of you in here love comedy. You remember Dave Chappelle? Dave Chappelle was an incredible stand-up performer. He would do something with Comedy Central. Dave had an agent, a manager. He had to do a deal with Comedy Central. Comedy Central then had to figure out how to pay him, how to put it up, how to market it. There's all of these steps involved. And the interesting thing with direct-to-consumer entertainment is because of so many different factors, it's easier to shoot stuff today. It's easier to edit stuff, all of this stuff because of the information revolution, IP directly into the house. You guys can get Dave Chappelle without Comedy Central. And so, broadcast television has been around for about 100 years, cable television about 50 years. But what's really happening now is we're just in that early stage of this new cycle. And the new cycle is you're going to get all of your entertainment via IP. And so we're sort of gearing up and building all of the tools underneath it so creators like filmmakers, comedians, you name it, can basically shoot high quality entertainment and deliver it directly to you. They take a lion's share of the revenue, and we act as sort of a digital studio. And so I hate to use the word digital studio because the studio connotation is all wrong. But I think
let me mention, how many of you saw this thing Louis C.K. did last year? How many of you know who Louis C.K. is? Most. So last year, what he did was he went and he filmed his own special, and he put it on the internet and said, hey, pay me $5 for it because it's fair. Yeah, it's a DRM-free file. You could probably share it. But because you're my fans and you want to be a part of this, I'm going to sell it directly to you. And, there are going to be a few parties in here who handle payments, who handle other things. But you're really building a relationship with me, and you're sponsoring me. You're supporting me directly. And, he did that at great cost and complexity, but it worked phenomenally. And what we've said is there's so many different creators, from comedians to filmmakers to lots of just
musicians,
other areas who want to have that same relationship, and not everyone is going to build that same set of tools. Let's make it not only easy for them to build, but easy for them to make great, where it has all of the integration with Twitter and Facebook, all of the community features. It handles putting your video on iPads, all the things that if you were just building it yourself you wouldn't get right. And give that tool to them. And I think that building that next generation of tools for people to share and put things on the web is the long-term play. And the short-term play is to really just say, hey, we've got the tool to let you create and do what you want.
Yeah, and I think, how many people here are involved in the film school? The interesting thing about where, how this is directly relatable to where you sit is I know that most of the people in the film school have a project at the end of the year where you're going to shoot something. Maybe it's 15 minutes, who knows, maybe it's 30. You don't have to ask for permission now to put this on the internet and to get this widely distributed and to make money and to have other people discover you. And if you wanted to start even 5 years ago and think about what it would take to distribute an independent film, you would literally have to, putting needles in your pupil and to understand all of the different things you would need to do. And then you would have someone shake you down for $5,000. And unfortunately, it was just a terrible experience. So we're saying, if you're a creator, don't ask for permission. If you have a fan, if you have a fan and an audience base from Twitter, Tumblr, MySpace, any of these places, MySpace, sorry, I had to mention that. This is a place for you, and it's a safe place. And so we did one of our first comedy specials in December. The comedian was called Maria Bamford. She made her budget back in 72 hours, and quadrupled her budget within a month. And why that's important is we face the same set of challenges that you do. People say this is not possible, this is too early, you guys don't have the correct sort of entertainment pedigree to make this work. And we'll be doing, we have 5 more major comics in our slate in the next, call it 120 days. And so it's amazing, when you look at all the work that we've done, the cumulative, when people say, what is success? I think of success as sort of a cumulative effort, meaning you look at all these little things and they add up, and eventually, 1 + 1 = 3. And we're not quite there yet today, but, the future is incredibly bright. And when everyone is thinking the same way, I think there's a famous patent quote. It says, when everyone is thinking alike, no one's thinking. When everyone's saying the world is this way, this is how you watch sports on broadcast, or you watch a great movie and it's on HBO, that's how it is, that's when things start to change. And so it's a very interesting time. And Hollywood is very young right now, is very, very innovative in comparison to where they have been. And I think in 5 to 10 years, those of you that are looking to be in the entertainment business, it is going to look so much different than it does today. The entire deck chairs are shifting.
And speaking of why you're here versus, up north is, this is, and it's not just sort of straight entertainment, but it's media and what's happening down
Yeah.
here, there's so much activity down
You
here, and it makes
have-
sense to be here near the studios and the content creators.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You would be insane if you were going to get in the entertainment business and did it anywhere but Los Angeles.
Yeah.
I think there's an interesting thing that happened where Silicon Valley got very good at communication tools, and the tools were so-so for a bunch of years. And Hollywood, people would try it, but it was showing off that they could use these tools. And finally, the tools in the tech world got good enough, and now storytellers are coming in and telling just these incredible stories. So there's this huge surge you're seeing all through LA, and it's actually a pretty amazing moment. And as Brian was saying with the early days of Silicon Valley, if there's something going on, if there's a big change that's about to happen, you want to be right in the center of it.
Yeah, and you can't catch lightning in a bottle. We've tried to do this in the past, and if your passion is the thing of the moment, meaning that's what everyone else is doing, like please don't start a photo sharing site right now. It's not a good idea. Don't start a Snapchat competitor right now. It's not a good idea. It's that discrete moment in time where you see everyone else doing it. That's when you should say to yourself, I've got to do something different, and that takes courage and that takes vision, but that's what people pay for. And that's inevitably where the value is. And I think when Dan and I were, sort of in your seat, I can remember having just all of this anxiety, like wanting to get out there, wanting to do it. But we were very, very focused on things that were not cool, which inevitably served us well. So it's this counterintuitive notion of pay attention to the present, but you have to be thinking at minimum 18 months out. Because if you're not, like, you're just too late, and things move so goddamn fast. For us, we have an incredible technology team and, tons and tons of experts, and we can barely, stay above water. And sometimes we got to put a snorkel on, and it's that hard.
So I want to ask you about two lessons that you guys highlighted. One is about culture and team building and what you've learned, and Brian has that. And then next, I want you to address what is the lean startup, what does it mean, and how you...
Thank God you didn't give me the lean startup idea. So culture and team, I think culture is about not settling, and is about finding people with compatible values and finding people that you want to spend time with. But I think what we've learned the hard way is that it's very easy to say, oh, we have a distinct culture, but that's cheap. Talking about culture is cheap. Culture is everything. It's intertwined in everything you do. And one of the things that we pride ourselves on is, we have like a best-selling author. We have people that speak multiple languages. We have, polymaths in every category. And it's sort of the type of person that we hire. When we sit down, one of the first things we say to people is like, so what else do you do besides, HCI? What else do you do besides machine learning? What else do you do besides, mobile UI design? And if we don't get a cogent answer very quickly, we usually look the other way. And so I think that one of the most valuable lessons that we've learned is it's okay to have your own culture. It's everyone tries to adapt the culture that's cool at the moment. It's like, woohoo, we're going to be like Google. And now everyone's like, no, we're like Facebook. And now everyone's like, no, we're going to be really cool like Tony Hsieh at Zappos. And everyone sort of tries to mimic the cool culture at the moment. But what's cool is what's organic and what's really, really the sort of substrate of your company. And that's very hard to find. And I think that you never, ever, ever can compromise. And if you do, you will feel the pain. And we have compromised in the past, and it's nearly spontaneously combusted our entire enterprise.
That is just such perfect advice when you think about. Dan actually gave me some advice. We were recently hiring engineers for our new venture.
Yeah.
And was sort of coming across sort of similar personality types. And Dan shared with me, and I want you to share with them, your process for cultural and personality fit before technical fit.
Yeah. So, as Brian said, the DNA of a company is set in that first few people, and it is the DNA. It will stay with the company even if the founders leave. It's permanent. And if you're doing that, you absolutely have to stand for something, which is to say the company has to be what it wants to be. You decide on something. We're the people who do this. And other people, maybe great people, but they're not a part of your culture. And some are very friendly and warm. Some are very aggressive sales cultures where it's all about the numbers. But you need to find the people who care about that thing. And one of our goals in talking about and recruiting for Chill is that we scare off a lot of people. The first time I talk to someone, I hope that half the people or more, the people who wouldn't be a fit with our culture say, who the hell was that? That's the craziest thing. I would never, ever join that company. That's great if we scare off a bunch of people. The next thing that we really do is we do what we call cultural interview. So we spend time and make sure people on our team have actually spent time with the people we're looking to hire. So, being a techie, I can grill people in a technical interview. We can come up with programming questions that they won't be able to answer and figure out, where the boundaries of their knowledge are. But that's not the first interview. We want to know, this is someone who we want to work with. Because as Brian mentioned, the first company we did, I know a lot of amazing, amazing engineers. And what we did was we hired all the best engineers we knew. We said, come join us. And everyone was a huge prima donna.
That's not a culture, hiring the best people, by the way.
Yeah, it's hiring the best at their job, right? And they each were specialists at their thing, but they each wanted to prove, I'm the best engineer in the world. So they'd be constantly battling each other, showing off, and it wasn't about a team, and it wasn't about a culture. So, we want people who are great all-around people, and then we want people who fit our culture, and it has to stand for something, or it just doesn't work.
Well, and we have, sort of core values. Perhaps we don't put them on the board in a cheesy manner. We don't have a gong, or we don't have any of these stupid things that people do when something happens. They all shake something, but
it's cool if that's the company you're building.
That's fine if that's what you like. I think we honor incredible flexibility and incredible intellectual flexibility. And I'm going to point out Andrew, who's standing right over there. Andrew went to SC. He came in as sort of a core metrics guy, very, very good at understanding how to work with software, very good at understanding how to extrapolate information out of big data sets. He was not a programmer. And, rarely do you come across someone who's out of school by years, and he decided, 7 months ago, I'm going to become a programmer. And now he's a Python programmer, and he went from sort of metrics and sort of business stuff to the programming side. But I think that's indicative of our culture. We have those type of people, and that's just what we honor. And it doesn't have to, you guys don't have to be like that. And I would stress, don't be like that. Find out what your rhythm is and what your natural beat is, and go after that. But if you don't have something you stand for, you'll never be able to recruit the best people.
That's great advice. I want to make sure the students get
Yeah.
questions and sort of. If you have to leave at 7:50, you're welcome to. If you want to stay a little bit because we ran a little bit late, you're welcome to. But Dan had great advice. We were hiring engineers for our new venture, and we're coming across the same personality type. We wanted a leader, someone that would inspire this whole team of engineers and be like a CTO at some point. And we were getting people who really couldn't, communicate very well. The personality. And so I asked Dan, is that sort of what we're going to find with engineers? And he gave me the line, how do you tell an extroverted engineer?
Well, so it's first, how do you tell an engineer? And it's they look at their feet when they're talking to you. Then it's how do you find an extroverted engineer? They look at your feet when they're talking to you.
That's so true. Sorry, engineers.
I'm one, so I can
All right,
tell that.
questions for Dan and Brian. Questions?